Good evening and welcome to the Legion Cantina. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing all the commander and operative units for the Rebel faction in Star Wars Legion. So here we are. I've been wanting to make this video for a while, but figured it was best to wait until all the units were fully updated, and now we are in the sort of final version of this latest round of Legion. I figure it's as good a time as any to go through and talk about all the different units for the Rebel faction. So in today's episode, as I've already said, I'll only be going through the sort of heroes, as it were. I'll do one on core and special forces, and then one on support and heavies further down the line as well. The original plan was to try and stick all of these into one video, but I think that video would end up being 2 hours long and probably not that great to listen to, so I'm going to split them up into more digestible chunks. In terms of the way I'm going to be ranking them, I'm going to be using a sort of S to D ranking, as I've been doing for sort of my tier list videos up until now, and then obviously I will put them all in a tier list at the end, but obviously we'll be talking about each one independently and then going through the tier list at the end. In terms of the ranking system I'm going to be using sort of this as a rough guide. So an S tier unit for me is a unit that basically can define a list by itself. It will be extremely powerful or extremely efficient in the case of some units, and they are quite versatile. They can work in lots of different lists. You don't have to kind of build around them or build a particular kind of list in order to get them to work. A tier units are basically S tier units, but a little bit less. They will enhance a list, they'll make it better, or they'll enable you to save points which you can use elsewhere. So it's important to note, like, it's not just like, I'm not going to put like Luke as the best unit in the game for Rebels just because he is arguably the most powerful. You pay a points premium for him, so he will be sort of knocked down in terms of that value, for instance, there. B tier is kind of average here, so if a unit is B tier, it's a solid unit. It's not going to make your list worse, but also it's unlikely to kind of shine and win you a game by itself. Like, it might do sometimes, but it's not going to be something you're like looking for to carry your list along, as it were. And then C tier is kind of where they start to arguably make your list a little bit worse. So these are either very situational units that may not always suit the kind of game that you're in, or they're just strictly weaker in some cases than other units and perhaps don't offer the same kind of power that you're looking for in your list. And then D tier units are almost objectively bad. Like, there's very little reason to run them. It might be that maybe they have like a combo with something, but maybe that combo isn't particularly strong and may not actually help you win your games. Important to note, these are my opinions, and I haven't played loads of games with every single unit in the Rebel faction. I have played with pretty much all of these as far as I'm aware. I think the only ones I'm missing are the Airspeeder and maybe there's another one I can't think of right now. But yeah, I have played with pretty much all of these units, but obviously to varying degrees. So a lot of my games, for instance, have been with Leia and Wicket, significantly more so than, for instance, something like Commander Luke or the Pyke Capo. So obviously, you can take all these with a pinch of salt, and I may say things that you don't necessarily agree with, but these are my opinions, and everyone's opinions are equally valid no matter how much you've played the game. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. I'm going to go for the commanders first and then move on to the operatives later. And yeah, let's go straight into Commander Luke. Really hate this guy now that my stupid video an hour before the updates just became completely irrelevant, but you got to do what you got to do sometimes, and yeah, it's fine. I'd rather have got it out ahead of time, so at least I was briefly correct for an hour before immediately being made wrong, rather than just never uploading that video at all. So, what does Luke offer? He's tough. He's definitely the toughest unit in the commander slot for Rebels, and that in and of itself is quite valuable. Having a commander who's not going to die and gives you a Courage 3 bubble is really nice, especially in a faction that can struggle with suppression and getting its actions off. He offers decent objective play, as I kind of said in my video before. Especially with his burst of speed, and if you can give him prepared supplies as well, that's a really solid combo, and it does give him like decent survivability even against big force users. You do pay a premium, 140 points, which maybe knocks his power level a little bit, but it's not super expensive, and for his toughness, it is kind of worth it, even if his damage output isn't crazy. And the final thing is, he is also usable in that Hoth Battle Force, which is pretty nice, and from the look of it, we're going to be getting some nice changes in there as well, along with the Han and Luke Tauns, which hopefully will enhance sort of the usability of Commander Luke as well. In terms of how I would run him, I would be running him with Burst of Speed, Improvised Orders, Seize Initiative, and Prepared Supplies. If you need 2 mercs, you can stick underworld connections on him, and Seize isn't mandatory, but getting a bit of order control in a faction that really struggles with order control is always really nice. So I would recommend bringing that Seize initiative on Luke. In terms of his power level, I'm putting him around a B tier. I think you have to take a commander, but my favorite current option for a commander is actually the bus, and that's the only one I'd kind of rank as sort of a unit that kind of actively is like enhancing the list. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with Commander Luke, and maybe this B tier is a little bit harsh, but I think especially since the command card changes, he's lost a lot of what made him good. And I think while he is still quite a fun and I think actually quite thematic unit, like I really like that, he's basically an annoyance for your opponent, and he is quite tough, and he will keep getting his actions off and things like that. Like he does have some nice theme. Yeah, he's not the full package yet, and again, that's part of his theme. Like he doesn't offer all the stuff that that Jedi Luke can offer. So yeah, I'm putting him at that B tier for the power ranking. But yeah, pre-command card change, definitely A tier, and not S tier, but definitely up there. So yeah, just a B tier for Luke this time round. Moving on to, I think, another pretty solid option in the commander slot for Rebels. It's Han Solo. To sort of sum him up, he's kind of a mid-range skirmisher. He's got some really nice abilities with his blaster. So he's got an ability called Gunslinger, which lets him shoot twice, and he's got an ability called Steady that lets him move and then get a free attack action, a ranged attack action, which lets him fire his gun twice, and then you can use the other move to kind of hide behind cover. So you'll often see people use Han sort of behind some nice line of sight blocking cover, jump out, take 2 shots, and then jump back behind cover. So he does have some nice tricks, and his damage output against the right list can be pretty nice. He isn't necessarily the toughest. Like he loses the immune pierce and the red saves and things like that Luke can offer, and he's not dead cheap. He's not super expensive. He's generally coming in around sort of 110, 115. I like my Han with either improv or underworld connections, and then up close and personal. You can also put things like the cold weather gear or something, the one that lets him gain unhindered basically and move through rough terrain, which can situationally be super useful. The flip side to Han is if he does get caught out of cover, he doesn't really have any tricks. So he gets low profile, which lets him remove a shot if he's in cover immediately. And he's got Uncanny Luck 3, which lets you reroll some defense die, which is okay, but you're only rerolling white defense die. And as we know, those are not what they... Well, I was about to say what they used to be, but they've never been good. So yeah, he does struggle a bit if he's caught off guard, basically. He does have some nice tricks with his command cards. So he's got the only 0 pip in the game currently, which is a really nice ability. Like if you need to guarantee going first on one turn, then definitely Han is your guy. Especially if you can use that with sort of like CC initiative on a Jedi or something, or on Mando, to guarantee getting that unit to go first is really nice. He also has a nice 3 pip that lets you shuffle an opponent's card back into their hand basically. So if you know they're going to go for a big power turn, you can kind of unleash that one, and then they're forced to pick a different command card. So he does have some nice tricks. He does have some decent options, and he's not terrible for his points. I think he's absolutely fine. And arguably, like, I think it's a bit tricky with a commander because you do need a commander. I'm worried I'm maybe ranking these slightly harshly in comparison to the operatives, which I think there is a lot more power in the rebel operative slot, but you don't need an operative, whereas you do need a commander. So while all these units may be slightly lower on the power side, there is a possibility that maybe they should be slightly higher ranked just because you are forced to take one. I've given him a theme of a B just because he is a bit tricky and he does have a few like nice sort of maneuvers going on, but he doesn't feel like the sort of scoundrel that maybe you would hope Han would feel like. So hoping that, maybe we'll get like an operative Han or something in the future. Maybe that's not possible, but something that maybe captures the spirit of Han a little bit more. Moving over to Leia, she is, if I had to sum up Rebels in a nutshell, she is kind of what you would expect, like, and what currently Rebels do represent in the game. So she gives out lots of dodges. She's quite plucky. Like she gives inspire, so she's got some nice courage tricks, but doesn't have great courage herself. So she kind of just helps out, and like for keeping a list going, she is really nice, especially if you can get those actions going early. But yeah, she's just a supportive commander who the whole rebel thing is kind of built around dodges and things like that, and she just really fits in that really nicely with her take cover 2, which hands out 2 dodges. You can enhance that with gear to take it to take cover 3, and handing out 3 dodges with 1 action is pretty powerful, especially if you can get it off nice and early in the turn. The other thing she has is a really nice synergy command card with Wicket called A Beautiful Friendship, which basically gives them teamwork. So whenever one of them gets a green token, the other one gets a green token, apart from standbys. And when they both have great inherent dodge synergy, it's super nice. They both have nimble, so you can often end up with like 6-7 dodges on Leia quite easily that you can then exemplar around, and that's really nice. So she is quite nice at just keeping and supporting other units in the game. She can be fairly tanky if you can get the dodges set up, but again, a bit like with Han, if you get caught out in the open against a really big dice pool, as soon as they're through those dodges, you are just instantly going to crumble because those white saves and no other defensive tech beyond nimble just, means that you are really going to struggle. It's sometimes worth taking like situational awareness on her just so she can dodge those crits, but again, that's sort of a kind of decision as to whether or not you're hoping for her to be actually shot or whether she's just going to be hiding behind some cover and firing out those dodges to units who are a bit more in the line of fire. Her blaster it's sort of a buff, sort of not a buff from the last edition where it had 3 black and pierce but was range 2. It's now sort of a better dice pool in that it will hit more, but it loses that pierce, and that pierce kind of was super nice against some units. But sharpshooter 2, surge crit, 3 dice, it's not the worst thing in the world, and in a pinch it's absolutely fine. Another thing is her command cards are okay. Her 1-pip's a bit weird because you kind of want to use it either really early on in the game when units are still quite far away because it's got that range 4 to infinity, or really late on in the game when you might be trying to ping a unit really far away at some objective. But yeah, it's not the kind of flashiest 1-pip in the world. Her 2-pip's not bad, No Time for Sorrows, that gives that free speed 1 move to 2 units, and especially if you've got Underworld connections, then that's a really nice thing to put on, Bad Batch, whatever, even like Jyn and Boba if you want. And her 3-pip's quite vanilla, but again, if you're trying to set up lots of supportive things, I quite like to put it on a bus sometimes, because if you can do Leia on a bus early on, suddenly you've got lots of tokens which you can exemplar around to keep your army going, so that can feel pretty nice. In terms of how I would set Leia up, normally I'd run her with Improv and probably Underworld if you're running 2 mercs. Even if you're not running 2 mercs, if you want to be giving orders to Bad Batch or Jyn, then that's pretty valid. And then normally just worth the portable scanner, just because if it generates like 2 dodges during the game, then it's probably worth it, and that's pretty good. And as I said, situational awareness is sometimes worth it if you do think she's going to be in the line of fire herself. But yeah, power level of a B. I think these 3, they're all like decent value at their points and can offer something to the army, but none of them are really kind of an outstanding and a really good unit. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh. I think probably the best of these 3 is Han, who could have the best case for moving up to A. But yeah, that's just my opinion again, and other people will have different thoughts. New Lando. I have tried him out a couple of games now. He is a very different kind of supportive commander. He feels a bit like a sort of blend of Leia and Han. So he has a few tricks. His command cards are wild. Like, for new players to the game, really take time to read those through and understand them, because I'm still not fully sure I get them. But he has some really nice abilities, and he is a fun, unique unit to use in game, which again, I think AMG have done a really good job designing these 3. I think Lando is on the weaker side, as you can see from this power ranking, but that doesn't necessarily take away from the fact he's quite a fun unit to use. I think his command cards, as I've said, are a bit complicated and fun. I don't know how competitive they'll end up being. A lot of it obviously depends on where Lando ends up sitting within the meta. What Lando does bring is Guidance Core Trooper unit. I tried this out with a squad of Mega Vets, so Vets, Heavy Weapon, and the upgraded squad, which comes to like 140 points or something. That unit's not worth 140 points, and even if you're giving it free standbys and extra aims and extra moves from Lando, as I tried to do, it's just a bit fiddly to use. And the problem is, even if you take Overwatch, so giving Sentinel on that range 3 standby for the Vets, if they have any range 4 or they have any units inside, they can just shoot it off, and then your 140 point unit suddenly feels very exposed and can go down quite quickly. So mine got one shot by Anakin in one of my games, for instance, which I know isn't particularly unique. Lots of units get one shot by Anakin, but yeah, 140 points going down in one turn felt pretty sad. He does have Allies of Convenience, which is a nice trick, and especially when Rebels are naturally running quite a few mercs in the operative slot, that is quite an interesting thing to have in the locker, and arguably, you know, gives you 5 points for free and kind of removes the sort of need to have a second command slot. So it's not bad. You can kind of maybe think of Lando as being 5 points cheaper if you really want to. One step ahead's not bad. Most of the time it's going to be giving Lando a speed 1 move, which is okay. Like, can allow you to get close to some objectives and maybe just snag something in the late game, and that's okay. Occasionally the pips will line up and giving another unit a speed 1 move can be pretty impactful, you know, jumping another unit behind cover or something before they can get shot. So yeah, not bad, and a nice ability to have. Steady and his blaster is okay. You probably will... So on one of his 1 pips, you can give him incognito, and you can basically choose to break that if you want to, and then get that steady shot off. And his blaster is perfectly fine. Like, it's basically Luke's blaster, but without the pierce, and that's okay. It's a pretty consistent dice pool, but again, not the kind of purpose of having Lando in your list. Yeah, I think he's on the lower power side of things. Unfortunately, I think he's still a bit expensive, and even though he does have some nice tricks with his command cards, I don't think he quite feels like he's on the same power level as the other commander units we've already looked at. So I'm going to give him a theme of an A because he is fun. He does have a few tricks, but yeah, that power level, I'm going to be giving him a C. Wicket, he just... What a guy. He's so much fun. He's so irritating for your opponents to deal with. And while he isn't necessarily the most powerful, he's not going to have the most impact on the game. There's something to be said for just having a good time with a unit, and bring Wicket and Leia, keep them at range 2 of each other, and just watch your opponent recoil in horror as you spam 16 dodges every turn. But yeah, in reality, he's okay, and I'm definitely biased here. He's one of my favourite units to use in the game. If you can get him set up with dodges, if you can keep him in cover, and if you can avoid some like ridiculously big dice pools like Sleeper Cell, he will be incredibly frustrating for your opponent to deal with, especially if you give him situational awareness, which I think you should nearly always do. Yeah, he's just extremely good, and he synergizes really well with Leia and with the rest of your army. Relentless is one of the best keywords in the game now, maybe even the best. Obviously his slinging is okay now. He lost his sharpshooter too, which feels sad, but still got surge to crit, and you know, you're hoping 1 even in heavy cover would still be getting through. But yeah, his spear's quite nice as well. Like, it's most of the time doing 2 pierce 1, and sometimes late game on an objective that's just enough to finish off, you know, some clones or some B1s or something, just to guarantee you a nice score in the late game. Yeah, he's just a really fun unit, and his scouting party's nice as well. Like, scouting party on some slingers or something, just to chuck them a bit further forward, always feels good. And himself, like, that scout 2 basically buys him an extra action on turn 1. So if Leia's already on the board, you can do something like scout 2 move, and then you can even aim if you want to give an exemplar aim for Leia to share around. So there are some nice tricks with Wicket, and I think he's just really fun. So still, I just wish the Leia Wicket combo was slightly more competitive, or maybe I was slightly better with it, but it is just really fun, and if you've not tried it, definitely worth a go. His command cards are pretty meh on the whole. Yeah, 2 of them focus on his 1 pip and his 2 pip, only order him, so even though they do give him some nice abilities like speed 3 or handing out observation, it's just not that good. Most of the time you don't want Wicket to get that order, so you can get that dodge 1 going to set up the nimble and the teamwork token sharing and all that stuff with Leia. So for 70 something points, as I tend to run him with forest dwellers and situational awareness, he's just great. And it's similar to Jyn, actually, who we'll talk about later. I think just as those annoying melee skirmishers, they can actually go quite a long way to bogging down your opponent. So if you're not giving him a try, give him a try. There's definitely, I'm probably overrating him here, and now I'm thinking about it. Putting him in over Han and Luke feels a bit wacky, but I'm gonna stand by it. I think he's good value, and I'm not ashamed to put him at the lower end of A tier for power. Theme is obviously S tier. He's just phenomenal. The Pyke Capo is still in Rebels, for anyone who forgot. yeah, I was about to say don't do this. It's not that you shouldn't do this. It's just that in order to run pikes, you need to have 3 rebel core already in your army, and then you can add extra core on top. And as I've said a load of times before, core is not what rebels do well. If you could take pikes as your just core option that fulfilled the core requirement, then that would be different. I think actually pikes would be probably the best rebel core option, or definitely up there. But yeah, they're just not quite there anymore. Yeah, he is a supportive commander, and if you are running pikes, like if you're bringing 3 pikes, it might be worth bringing him. Yeah, if you want to, you normally I'd bring him with vigilance just so you can keep those dodges set up and things like that. But with the dice pools that are knocking around now, like even having 2 dodges on a unit just isn't what it used to be. So yeah, it's sadly not really a thing. Yeah, he's also only 4 HP, and the command cards don't synergize with the army. Like, it's just something that doesn't really fit with Rebels anymore. Like, I think if you really want to, dropping maybe 1 Pyke trooper unit into your core slot isn't the worst thing in the world, but yeah, I don't think this works. So I think the theme is okay. Like, there's nothing particularly stand out and nothing particularly wrong with it, so it's just kind of middling. But the power level is probably a C, and I think not far off a D, if I'm being honest. Like, he's quite cheap at least, and with the loss of the generic officer, he does at least have a more of a niche. But I think when we get to see the custom officers come back in, you can probably think of this as a D, because it just doesn't really offer much. So, and it doesn't even fulfill your commander requirement because it's a mercenary. So yeah, just not really a thing, sadly. So that's it for the commanders. We're now going to be moving over to the powerhouse of the Royal Faction, which is the operative slot. And we're going to be starting off with one of my personal favourite operatives who, as I've said in a previous video, I was really hoping we'd get a bit of a glow up and just didn't. And she kind of needs it, because I think you could legitimately make the argument that she's 15 to 20 points too expensive. Her saber is worse than her Padawan version, which just feels bizarre. But yeah, it's a bit sad for Ahsoka. She has really consistent melee damage. You can fix her dice really well with dodges because of that Jarkai mastery, and she has excellent access to dodges in a faction that has really good access to dodges. So she synergizes really well with what you're trying to do, and I really like her 3-pip. I really like her 2-pip synergy card with Sabine, and I don't mind her 1-pip. Her 2-pip Guardian stuff is not really relevant, so don't really run it. But yeah, it's fine, and she's a decent unit, but she's too expensive. Normally coming in around 170 points, when you can get whatever, Bad Batch for 150, Din for 135. It just doesn't really make sense anymore, unfortunately. So she either needs like Master of the Force 1, which I would love to see. That would be a bit of a game changer. I'd love to see that. Or she needs a bit of a points change. But yeah, currently she just doesn't really have that niche. Yeah, she has phenomenal synergy with Sabine on their 2-pip, which is still, for me, one of the best command cards in the game. Am I going to say that? Yeah. Just how well they synergize together in terms of dodge generation. Like, it's pretty common on that turn for both of them to be having access to 5 or 6 dodges, and that lets Sabine survive pretty much whatever damage is going to be thrown her way, and it lets Ahsoka pretty much guarantee 6 crits if that's what you really need, and that's pretty phenomenal. That's a really powerful turn. It's a shame that the rest of your army doesn't get much for it, but, on that dive turn with those 2, it's not bad at all. I will say she also has a pretty good niche against armor. Like, with her impact 2 and her surge to crit and her dice fixing, you'll be pretty sad if you're not getting 5 pierce 2 against armor, and normally you'll be getting 6 pierce 2, even on like a fairly basic attack if she's got a couple of dodges. So that's pretty nice, and definitely if armor is something you're afraid of, like, Ahsoka does have a pretty good niche against that. As I've already said, no Master Force is pretty sad. Normally with my Ahsoka, I would be running her with Burst of Speed, Offensive Push, Force Reflexes, and CC Initiative. She does get that free recover on her 3-pip, so after you've dived in, normally after the 2-pip Sabine turn with the list I run, you can then recover your Offensive Push and your Reflexes to basically go again. And while she doesn't have Disengage or anything, you hope to just kind of kill whatever you're in melee with and then kind of move away. And actually, having that much dodge access against Force users is normally pretty good when she also has that immune pierce. So She can survive fairly well against some big force users, but that's not what you need a 170 point unit to be doing, unfortunately. And yeah, she does just need a little bit of a glow up, please, AMG. Daimyo Boba Fett. Another unit I've got a real soft spot for, and I just can't quite get to work. He is a really consistent mid-range damage dealing unit, and he can handle himself in melee. That independent standby is just a really nice trick, and it really messes with people. People hate triggering standbys, and when he's got that sentinel for that range 3, you can't section off a load of the board because you do 2 pierce 1, so you're not sectioning off anything really. But the other option is, in a game that is as movement based as it is, and he has tactical, you can just use it to perform a speed 2 move if you want to. And if they opt to shoot off your standby as their first action, that's normally not bad at all. Like, you're pretty tanky, you can take those hits. So yeah, he does have some nice tricks. The downside to that is that often with his command cards, you are probably going to want to be giving him an order, especially with his Whipcord and Rule with Respect, which I think are his current 2 best command cards. He did lose access to the Flamer on the command card, but he still has access to it as an equipment upgrade. So yeah, he is just a really solid guy who unfortunately exists in the Rebel Operative slot, which just makes it very hard for him to compete. So he does just get outshone by other units. Would be nice if maybe, I don't think he deserves speed 3, but just a little points drop or another extra ability or something just to give him a bit more oomph, because he's currently just a little bit lacking. He does have access to that flamer, as I said, on the equipment slot, which is really nice. In terms of his theme, I think it's like a B. He doesn't feel super special necessarily theme wise. I think he has some decent command cards and he feels fairly well realized, but again, nothing super standout. You can maybe make an argument for A. Power level wise, he's B. He's not going to make your army better than other operatives, and I think this is the key bit here. I think operatives are going to have a harder time in this tier list just because they are up against some really strong options. So the problem is, in order to take some of these operatives that aren't as strong, you have to pass on operatives that are stronger. So they're going to be rated more harshly than the commanders were. So I'm going to be putting Boba down at a B tier. In truth, he's probably C tier, but I've got a little bit of a soft spot for him. If I was going to be running Boba, I would literally just take the Flamer. I wouldn't take any other upgrades personally. Some people take Hunter, but you have enough aim access and things like that. So Tenacity's not the worst because he's a reasonable melee threat. So maybe that's something, and with those Mando saves, you actually might be able to survive after you've been wounded. But again, not something I would be looking to take on my Boba. Normally just try and save the points. Cassian, another one of the recently updated units. He has not changed that much. He is very similar to units to the way he played before. He can ping at long range with that infinite range sniper, which is pretty nice. And his pistol is no joke either. The 2 red, 1 black PS1 that can go up to range 3 with his nice aim access is really good. I think his change to operative is overall a good one. It's just a shame that, again, he is in that very competitive slot. But he is more of an operative, I think, as a character than he was a commander. The field commander option is nice, so it doesn't force you to take a commander option, which is decent. So, you know, if you're doing the sort of Rogue One thing of Cassian K2 Jyn, which I have run in a couple of games now, that's definitely something that can work, and it doesn't require you to take any other units, so not bad at all. Infiltrate continues to be a phenomenal ability to have in the game, and it actually does give you the option, if you really want to be aggressive, to infiltrate in pistol mode and just get in there and fire straight away. You know, don't mess around with the sniper, just to get him and K2 right up in there with their tokens and their aims. So yeah, it could be a thing. He does have white saves though, and that means any unit that is up close and personal and trying to brawl in that kind of way in those close range fights, a bit like I said with Han, is going to have a little bit of a tricky time. So even though he does have K2 to maybe keep him alive a bit longer, it's probably not going to be something that is a sort of sustainable long-term strategy. And at 90 points, he is probably just a bit too expensive to, again, be at that really competitive end. His command cards are okay. I really like his 1-pip now. I think a couple of people have seen saying it's got a bit worse, and I'm not sure I agree with that. The free attack action and the aims and the gunslinger, especially with how standby got changed now, yeah, doesn't make sense to me. So I think that's really strong for Cassian now, and effectively gives him. You can actually think of it as just straight up relentless, although you don't want to be in melee. So getting steady on that Cassian shot, as I think I've said in a previous video, I think is really nice. And when he's token sharing with K2, and you really want those aims for K2's blaster as well with those 5 white surge crit, I think it's a really decent combo. So yeah, I think he plays pretty thematically, so that's quite nice, but his power level is probably a little bit lacking, and in some ways, again, this B tier might be a little bit on the generous side. He may actually be more like a C tier unit. K2, you can only take him if you've got Cassian. He basically is always just going to be Cassian's buddy. He's got a lot of stuff that relates to Cassian, so detachment Cassian obviously allows you to bring him, and then teamwork Cassian as well. So that token sharing is really nice, especially when they have he has the calculate odds, which gives them effectively both if they're range 2 and aim and a dodge. Incognito, again, is a really nice ability and means you can kind of play K2 a bit differently and take a few more risks if you really want to. And combined with that infiltrate gives you some really decent objective play options earlier on that maybe wouldn't be accessible to other units. Yeah, he just supports Cassian pretty well. I'd always bring the blaster just for the that chance that he goes a bit nuts. Like, if you can get a couple of veins on him, you can actually sometimes be pushing like 3 or 4 hits, and a lot of those are going to be crits and against armor and things like that. It's pretty nice. Like, he is a little bit of a tank shredder in some ways, especially if you can get them in a side arc or something to get a weak point. He could do some real damage. So yeah, not to be sniffed at. He isn't super tanky. It'd be nice if he had impervious or something like that to maybe just keep him going a bit longer, but yeah, I think him and Cassian are both kind of at a relatively similar power level. They kind of work together pretty well, and maybe this B tier is a little bit generous, but I'll put them towards the bottom of B tier, and I think the B tier is going to end up being a pretty stacked tier based on what I've been saying, so I might be a little bit harsh in the end tier list. Chewie. Yeah, he doesn't suit the new version of the game, unfortunately. I think while he does still work pretty well with Han, and that's why I've given him an A on the theme, I think that combo is still pretty nice. It's just not great. It's sort of a supportive unit with a bit of pinch on that bowcaster as well. Like, you normally get 3 Pierce 1 from that bowcaster, which isn't bad at all. Do you get 3 Pierce 1? Maybe 2.5 Pierce 1, but yeah, not bad at all. Guardian on a key unit, you're basically saying I will take 3 hits away from this, and Chewie will take 3 wounds because t-shirt saves don't normally come through. They can sometimes, but not often. So in that way, and range and solid melee isn't terrible. If I'm bringing Chewie, it normally won't be in the most competitive setting. So in that case, I think bringing tenacity and even an offensive push or something just to go a bit nuts on that melee, because actually 5 red going into a force user or something is kind of fun. He surged to crit as well. Like, that could be pretty interesting for finishing off a force user or terrifying a weakened melee weakened trooper unit or something. So that is definitely a fringe case for Chewie, especially when you're getting that charge as well. But most likely he'll be dead by turn 2 or turn 3 if he is caught out anywhere near the open. And the other teamwork hand isn't bad. I think the problem is they don't inherently natively generate tokens. While I would take my hand with up close and personal to get a couple of dodges, it's not the kind of thing that is going to necessarily keep Chewie and Han alive in the sort of long term. So yeah, their token generation isn't great. That said, if you do have a Leia or something that can hand them dodges, then maybe that starts to become a bit more of a thing. But the fact they struggle to naturally generate tokens themselves, apart from like Han's 1 pip, for instance, is 0 pip isn't necessarily that good. And as I've said, even though he's got 9 HP, without those surges on those saves, he does crumble very quickly. So he is at the lower end of the power level, and I think he's definitely a C and possibly towards the lower end of C. While he is fun, I don't think he is that powerful. Moving to the complete opposite end of the power level scale, we've got Djarin, and this guy's just so good. And I think I didn't get it until I ran him for a couple of games in a row, and I just started to see the output he has, the threat he has, and the space he creates. And with all of those things, he is just a bit of a terror for your opponents to deal with. He hits hard, he can handle himself in sort of the up close and personal shooting duels, and also in melee he's no slouch either, especially if you give him the Beskar spear or the Amban or anything like that. His dice balls get pretty decent pretty quickly. His independent is great. I think actually one of the best independents in the game. The aim and the dodge just great. And, you know, the dodge synergizes with the Beskar spear if you're trapped in melee and all this stuff. Like, it's really strong. And obviously he's got those Mando saves and impervious to go with that. So Force users, while they are a little bit scary, it's not terrifying. Like, he can handle himself, and definitely bogging down Force users for a turn or two might be something he is capable of doing, especially with that Amban giving that immobilize. His command cards are fine. I think the only one I would be routinely taking is the 1-pip. The 2-pip's not bad. It has some quite situational uses, but when you are in this situation, it is pretty strong. His 3-pip's just a bit weak, especially the fact it requires an entire action. But if you can get an opponent bunched up, it will sometimes pay off in a big way, but not the most common one that I would be taking with Din. And inherently, you probably don't want to be giving him an order that often, especially since we lost comms relay. So, because you lose that independent, and basically, if you think about every time you're giving him an order, it costs an aim and a dodge. It doesn't feel great. So, yeah, he only wants an order when he kind of really needs it. That said, some people take some people take seize initiative. That does maybe tend to be in the Empire lists a bit more with Vader's 2-pip to give him those 3 extra actions. So, I don't know, just not how I like to play my Din personally. He has excellent aim generation, so on that relentless turn, for instance, he should have 2 aims and a dodge, and that just makes your dice pool so consistent, especially if you're using the flamer with those red dice that surge to crit. You can really dish out a lot of damage very quickly with those aims backing it up. He does have some really strong upgrades, so he has his jetpack that gives him jump 2 and takes him to speed 3, and I've already mentioned Beskar spear and the Amban. Also, flamer's down to 5 points, which, you know, cuts 3 points off the cost of your dim, which is always nice. So yeah, he normally comes in around 130, and for those kind of points, he's going to give you a lot, and your opponent is going to be afraid of him, especially if they've got some mega squads or some bigger units. They're going to be afraid of that flamer. Grogu is great that he exists and is in the game. Like, I love it, and every time I use him, it's always fun. And when you roll that red dice, you've got no idea what's going to happen. It's never the one you want, but it is always a fun time, and definitely, if you are having a more chill game, a really fun unit to bring along, and gives Din a bit more survivability, which is never bad either. So yeah, theme is an A tier. He's not quite perfect, but he does feel kind of how you'd want him to in game, and, you know, does feel kind of nearly as powerful as he comes across in the show sometimes. And his power level, yeah, is an S for me. He is in that kind of elite level of rebel units. A less powerful mercenary, but one I still have a soft spot for, is IG-11. He is sort of long range plink damage for the most part, so you can take a programming on him that if you put bounty on a commander, gives you Pierce 1, or if you put it on an operative, it gives you suppressive, so 2 nice options there. Nearly always correct to take that Pierce just for that consistency on his damage. And should be noted that it applies to all of his weapons, so you can get that extra Pierce 1 on the DLT, and you can even get his range 3 weapon up to Pierce 2. So potential for 2 Pierce 2 at range 3 is pretty nice as well. The other option is you run him as like something that's going to run in, you pop his 1-pip, and then he takes a bunch of damage when he's shot the next turn, you hope he survives, and then you go for his self-destruct on his 3-pip, which you have to take. You have to take that 3-pip command card. So you either go for that long-range plink damage all game, and he survives having hardly taken any damage, or he runs in and dies like turn 2 or turn 3 after using his self-destruct ability. So yeah, 2 different ways to run him, and both of them are quite interesting. I think I prefer the long range plink one just because it requires less thought, but the hand grenade one is also really nice. Gunslinger at range 4 with Pierce is pretty decent, and it will be really annoying for people to deal with, especially, you know, if they're running, well, specifically clones. It's quite strong against Empire as well. Being able to pick off those red saves at long range does feel really good, so he is going to give you some nice options there and some very consistent damage output. His command cards are fine. His 2-pip's pretty decent. It's quite a nice turn 1 play because you get that steady and that aim, so you can just move onto the board with that steady, and it gives you a threat range of almost the entire board, no matter the scenario. So that's pretty nice, and will hopefully get you guarantee getting off, you know, normally it's going to be like 4 Pierce 2 on turn 1, which is pretty good. His 1-pip is kind of that up close and personal, just firing at everything thing, which is quite good, especially, you know, if you take like Hunter or something. That can be quite a nice thing to have and just go all in on that turn, which is sometimes a nice thing to do. His armor 1 and his red saves make him like pretty resistant to plink damage. He also has impervious, so Pierce isn't phenomenal against him. He's a bit like K2 in terms of that survivability, like not perfect, but normally he's going to have enough. Also, repair works on him, so if you do have Astros running around for, a bus or an ATRT normally, being able to heal a couple wounds on IG is pretty nice as well, and definitely something that a core unit would be happy to do for its activation, just giving IG a wound or two back. The other thing is, if he's sitting at the back, he's not very order hungry. He's a bit like an ATRT in that sense. Like, he can just sit at the back, do a bit of consistent damage, and you can let your other sort of more order hungry units kind of go in and do their thing. So I'm going to put him at a B tier. He's maybe a little bit, I was about to say expensive, maybe not expensive, but he just doesn't have huge impact on the game necessarily. But he's going to be reliable. He's going to give you some decent damage output if you play him as that long range option. And if you throw him in, then it'll either be really good or really bad. And either way, you'll have had fun hopefully along the way. So he's not a bad unit to use. Theme's a B tier. He doesn't do anything particularly special for me. Like, he doesn't feel like an invincible killing robot, which is, I think, how these guys were sort of in the lore. But yeah, you also wouldn't want that in the game, so I can understand why he isn't. Moving over to another one of the new units, it's Jyn Erso. She might now be one of my favourite Rebel units, which is just a brilliant change when her previous sort of commander version felt very confused. It felt like it didn't really do anything that well. Instantly, she's been given a really clear identity as just this unit that's just going to ping around between your opponent's units with that disengage and that agile, and she's just going to annoy them. And, for having something like that, which can tie units down, create space, create time for your other units on the board for quite a cheap price, I think she is going to have a decent niche. And while the operative unit sort of slot is pretty stacked, I think she does have her own spot within it, and that's super valuable because as long as a unit offers you something else in that slot that no other unit can really do, it's always eventually going to find hopefully a home in some lists. So that's really nice to see, and she's definitely an upgrade on her previous version. Independent move with agile with disengage, it's just great. Like, it lets you, if you want to, you can move into a unit that's activated towards the end of your turn, and then you can't be shot. You're safe for that turn, and then at the start of the next turn, you have this flexibility to kind of go wherever you need to. Like, ideally, maybe into another unit that didn't get an order, so you can hopefully buy a bit more time. But yeah, it's just great, and getting that dodge set up in advance. I've said this before. The earlier in a turn you can get a dodge set up, the better it is, because it means you're actually going to get value from it. There's no point handing out dodges last thing during a turn, because unless you've got vigilance, it's going to be completely irrelevant. So being able to do that preemptively and move preemptively are super powerful. And yeah, I think it's a really strong ability. And while her damage output is not great at all, like, do not run her as a damage piece, I think she does have something to offer, and that's really good. She has Infiltrate as well, and, adding Infiltrate to a unit with this level of maneuverability is always going to be really nice. Like, ideally, you don't want to pull her too early, but if you Infiltrate her and double move her behind some LOS blocking that's quite central in the middle, quite central on the board, your opponent isn't going to want to, is going to be a bit frustrated as to, like, what she really does. Like, they're not going to be afraid of her damage output necessarily, but a bit like with Luke with that disengage, she just has so many options, and, getting 3 speed 2 moves in a turn is some pretty reasonable movement range, and when that'll give her 3 dodges as well, it's not bad at all. Her blaster's also not bad. Like, normally it's doing 2 pierce 1, and 2 pierce 1, I've said a couple of times now, in a pinch is no bad thing at all, especially when she's got that surge to crit and that sharpshooter 1. You're normally going to be getting 2 pierce 1 through, so if you need to finish off a unit in a clutch situation, not bad at all. And also, she's, in some ways, she's almost like anti-order hungry. Like, you really want to preserve that independent move, because getting that extra move in with that agile is really good. So while her command cards are fine, I think the only one I find myself running is her 3-pip, because it doesn't have to order her, and it has some nice abilities like giving danger sense to Luke, or Bad Batch, if you're able to get that underworld connections on her, is pretty decent. So yeah, she feels pretty nice. I think her 1-pip's not great. While it does give her charge, you give up independent move in order to gain charge. So you've lost an action in order to gain an action, and you don't get to choose, to maintain it. So that doesn't feel great. And while it does then give her a second opportunity to move and charge later in the turn, I'm not sure that's worth it, because getting 2 attacks in with Jyn is not super relevant. I'd much rather be moving than Jyn than attacking with Jyn. I'd rather have that extra dodge than basically you can think of a weapon as 2 and a bit with suppressive. Yeah, it's not, the damage is not the way to go with Jyn. Think of her more for those objectives and things like that. So yeah, she's fun, and give her a go if you've not already. As I said, she does play quite similarly to Wicket. They have different abilities, but in terms of setting up lots of dodges and not having huge damage output but being annoying for your opponents to deal with, that's kind of the niche they both sit in. In terms of theme, I'll give her A tier. Like, I think she could maybe feel a bit scarier in terms of her damage, but also, you know, maybe we don't want, in order to balance her, you don't have to make her more points, which then makes her lose her niche. So I like that she's a bit lower power in terms of her threat, but she does offer something different for a lower cost. I'm going to put her power as an A. I think there are worlds in which specifically Sleeper Cell don't get a huge nerf and Rebels are not crying out for loads of damage to come from their heroes, where having a cheap objective player like Jyn in your army to buy you a bit of time is pretty strong. So yeah, I think there's a world in which Jyn actually becomes quite powerful, but we'll have to wait and see. In terms of how I'd run her, stick Inspiring Presence on her, because the way it's currently written, it would give that Courage 3 bubble at range 4, which is really nice for Rebels, and for just 5 points, it's pretty good. Alternatively, classic improvised orders is never a bad pick. Just being able to tap those orders is always a nice thing to have. And in terms of her training, I would give her situational awareness. Wouldn't bother with anything like seize the initiative. Just situational awareness, dodge those crits, keep on moving. Yeah, give her a go. She's fun. Jedi Luke. Yeah, he is the probably now back to being the best version of Luke. Having, you know, I've been really on this seesaw recently. I was Jedi Luke the whole way, then I was Commander Luke for a bit, and now I'm back to Jedi Luke. Best objective player in Rebels for me. Not best objective playing for his cost, but a best objective player in Rebels. Give him force push with that disengage, with that 7 health, with the immune pierce. He's just a nightmare for your opponents to deal with. His melee damage is decent. Like, sometimes you'll roll 3 pierce 2, sometimes you'll roll 6 pierce 2, and that's just how it is with 7 black dice surge crit. And he has access to all 6 of the command cards, unlike his commander version. So yeah, he has some really good options. He serves your Master World a bit weird now, but still is able to double tap Sleeper Cell, which is always going to be a good thing to have in your back pocket. And being able to dump suppression is also okay. Like, if you've got Mind Trick and you serve your Master well, going up to like 5 suppression on a unit is pretty decent. I would actually have liked to see it go to 4 suppression on you serve your Master well, just because I think there is a threshold where putting 6 suppression on a unit to actually panic them if they've got a Courage 3 commander nearby could have been super valuable. So I'm a little bit annoyed at that 5, but it's still not bad. Yeah, just not as strong as it used to be. And Son of Skywalker is always going to be a nice option with Jedi Luke. I actually do take Hunter, or On the Hunt as it's now called, with Luke, just because I think it's a really nice thing to get aims on Luke to increase that consistency. If I'm feeling confident, I will take Force Push. If I'm feeling a bit more realistic, I will not take Force Push, and that's just sort of kind of how I'm feeling on the day. And then always take Burst of Speed, and normally take Mind Trick, although obviously Serve Your Master Well got changed, so it's now not as good, but it's still a nice option to have. Other options are Reflexes or Guidance as well, giving out surges. I did actually wonder for a bit about Luke Bad Batch, and then Luke Guidancing a surge onto Bad Batch as well, which might be a reasonable combo. In terms of training slots, Into the Fray is also perfectly valid, as is CC Initiative. They're all good options. But yeah, he's just great, and if you play him correctly, he'll survive the game. If you play him badly, he'll either do nothing or he'll die, and then you're 200-ish points down, and that's just how it goes. So he does require a lot of skill to get right, and if you are not confident with him, you probably will feel like he's not doing a whole lot, but he can not win games by himself, but he can create so many problems for your opponent that your other units can actually have a lot of space and time to do what they need to do. And your opponents will be really scared of him because he just has so much potential to go nuts. Like, Son of Skywalker will never do 14 PS4, but it can do 14 PS4. And if it was to do 14 PS4, that would be quite a big deal for your opponent to deal with. So while most of the time it's only going to deal like 8 or 9 PS4, it's still a lot for your opponent to deal with. And he can sometimes, if you're lucky, one-hit heroes and things like that. Like, he's great against Ventress. He's pretty good against more like these sort of slightly lower tier heroes he can deal with quite nicely. He does struggle into, Dooku and Vader. He doesn't quite have the firepower to really scare them very much at all. And yeah, he's just a big, powerful Jedi who will kind of define how your games go. And if you're comfortable with that, then run him. If you're not comfortable with that, then maybe split his power level between some less expensive units. Just put him as a B tier, just because he doesn't feel like that special, and I'd like it if he had maybe a mastery or something to just give him a little bit more spice in there, maybe. But yeah, I can understand why he is how he is, and he is still super fun. And his disengage is just a great keyword to have as well. His power level's an A. This is just he's not quite S tier for me, just because I think he's maybe just a little bit expensive in his full form. But if you're really good at the game, I think he probably does creep into that S tier power level. If you're not so good at the game, he's arguably B or C, just because he will be a bit of a point sink for you. Moving to the other end of the tier list, this is R2D2, and while the theme is here, he's a fun, wacky unit who is going to try and sneak across the board, real sneaky style. Yeah, the power level's not there. If you're dropping 55 or even up to 70 points, I think with C3PO, yeah, it's not the best thing to do. Saying that, if you are running R2, I'd definitely bring C3PO along, because I think you're maybe going for a bit more of a fun thematic list if you're bringing R2 along rather than that more competitive end, and you might as well go in for a penny and for a pound on putting the two of them together and just having a good time. I will say his repair 4 is not bad, and if Rebels had some slightly more valuable vehicles, like, I wonder if I was about to say, is there an Ishingar for repair 4, but maybe not. It's not bad at all. So that could be something. If he ever gets a chunk cheaper, it could possibly work. As I said, secret mission is possible, but it's very difficult. He has inconspicuous to help him, which means he basically is much more difficult to target. But yeah, it's a bit sad, but he's a little bit of a meme. And his command cards are okay, but don't really synergize with what you want him to be doing. So yeah, and if you're giving R2 orders, you're not giving other units orders, which is inherently just not what you want to be doing. Yeah, it's okay, but it's one of the lower end of the power level, even if the theme is quite good. Getting towards the end of the operatives now, we're looking at Sabine Wren. She has improved a little bit. Her melee got better, so she can now use her blasters in melee. This has been a change for all Mandalorians. So previously her melee was only 2 black. Now it's gone up to a rainbow with PS1. So it's improved significantly, and that is a very nice upgrade for Sabine. She is just a sort of close range skirmisher who isn't that keen on melee. She's more keen than she used to be, especially now. I don't think you have to take the dark saber in order to cope in melee, because you can actually punch something and escape if it is a weakened unit. But yeah, it's a bit tricky, and the real crushing thing for Sabine is that courage 2. With a unit this valuable, you need to be getting all its actions from it, and yeah, losing, because effectively in the game now, you pretty much always, as I've said a few times, have to be moving. And if you are suppressed, so if you only need 2 suppression to be suppressed, it does mean that you are only realistically going to be moving and not getting that gunslinger off, and that probably costs you like 4 PS2, which is quite a lot to give up by losing those actions to suppression. So while she is quite fun, and like that speed 3 with the gunslinger and her decent pistols isn't bad at all, yeah, it's just not quite there, unfortunately, in terms of like her power level. Her personal command cards are a bit forgettable now. Explosions used to be really good, is now okay, but I think, again, doesn't feel like the flashiest necessarily. Again, in the situations where your opponent's bunched up, it can feel really good, and dumping a load of suppression and a bit of damage can be super nice. It's probably not quite as powerful as it used to be. Her 2-pip just only ordering her, and yes, it recovers her, which is nice for getting rid of suppression, but yeah, not really a thing. And her 3-pip, again, if it gave out tokens to every unit she ordered, it would be good. Because it only gives tokens to her, it's a lot less good. So yeah, it's a little bit sad. Her shield did get upgraded, so if it's like now doesn't require the recover to recharge, it now does it automatically if you've not spent it. So that's pretty good, and I think means you probably get 2 shots from it, or maybe an extra shot from it, which is quite nice. So yeah, an extra shield token can go quite a long way, and now means that I'm probably a bit more likely to take it than I was before. Her whipcord is fun. I'm not good enough at the game to take it, but it can, again, similar to Boba's, tie it down. The weakness with this one is it does require an action to do, so it's a little bit fiddly to get right. But yeah, she's got nimble. She's got pretty decent dodge access just through rebels and through some command cards and things like that. So yeah, she's not bad. And especially if you're running with Ahsoka, they are going to be having a lot of dodges, and does make her really tough. I normally bring her with prepared supplies to just set up that dodge chain nice and early. And I've already talked about the courage too. Yeah, I think A tier theme. Like, she feels like she's fairly hard hitting, pretty tough, but well, maybe the courage thing actually isn't that thematic because she is fairly brave. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe this should be down to a B. And then her power level, I'm actually gonna knock her. It was originally at a B tier, but I am gonna knock her down to C just because of that courage too. But she will be at the top end of C. Don't you worry. And finally, probably Rebel's best unit, although there is one unit later on that maybe will have an argument for that, but probably Rebel's best unit is going to be the Bad Batch, and they're coming in at 150 with all the with Amiga equipped. And yeah, they're just tough as nails, especially in Rebels. They feel so tough in Rebels, and yeah, it just is so much for your opponent to deal with. Like, hide them turn 1, hide them through most of turn 2, maybe jump out for a steady shot if you can, and then if you reach the end of turn 2, by the time a few units have started to go down, there's not much your opponent's realistically going to be doing to try and kill them. Like, getting through 10 surging red saves with impervious, with a cash dodge, it's just so much for your opponent to deal with. And while they might try and focus them down, it often feels like she's just banging your head against a brick wall, because so often with those red surging, you throw, let's say you throw 10 dice at Bad Batch in heavy cover, 3 go for heavy cover maybe, so you're down to 7, and then you save maybe 5, maybe even 6 if you're lucky. So suddenly your huge attack from maybe, I don't know, a sleeper cell or something, or a big squad of B2s has suddenly been negated down to 1 or 2 wounds, and they might not even lose a model. And at that point, you're just like, wow, I've spent a whole action from, if it's big B2s, like a really expensive unit, to shoot at them, and it's just not done anything. And that can be pretty crushing. They also have some nice abilities like Hunter's Auto Wound, challenging objectives at range 1 with Amiga is really nice, and does play into that kind of play style of Bad Batch hiding behind LOS blocking, challenging an objective, move out, steady shot, move back, and you can't be seen, so you can't be shot. You've done some damage, you've scored an objective, they've done their job for the turn, and actually in the late game they can really hoover up a lot of objectives by themselves quite effectively. They're not the sort of powerhouse that they are in GAR in terms of their firepower, but they do have some really nice objective play options. And their 3-pip is decent, and it is actually it's an option you can consider on turn 1 if you're not that fussed about losing, because Rebels have extra acts. If you're not that fussed about losing that improvised order, 50-50 that a lot happens at the start of games, it's not a bad option. Like, having that speed 3 and those extra aims and things like that might require to force your opponent just to sit that bit further back, because Bad Batch don't have to attack on that turn. It's great if they do get to attack, because they'll probably put through like 8 or 9 hits. But if they don't attack and they buy you some space and time are a resource in this game now, rather than just killing units. So definitely a valid thing for them to do. My only slight query is, do they feel like Rebels? I've played them a few times. I went through a period where I played them in almost every game, because I was having, I was having a bit of a thought about, like, I've dropped top Luke basically because I realised I just wasn't quite good enough with him, and Din wasn't quite doing it for me. So I was like, okay, let's try some Bad Batch, and they weren't bad, but I've played a few games with Gar while I've been playing Legion, and I just don't quite mesh with the playstyle. And Bad Batch does just feel a bit like Gar in some ways. It doesn't have the kind of risk reward element that I sort of want from Rebels, because actually, if you make a mistake with Bad Batch, quite often you don't get punished for it because they are so tough. And yeah, I'm not saying there's no skill to using, because there is skill to using them, absolutely, but they don't quite have that jeopardy that I perhaps like from my rebel units sometime. Saying that, it does, minimize the salt, because they aren't going to get blown to pieces in one turn, like some of your rebel units can be. So maybe it's quite healthy for your sanity in the long term to run Bad Batch. But yeah, that's all the commanders and all the operatives, and as I say, we'll carry on with the trooper options and the vehicles and sports, all that stuff later on. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Obviously, you're not going to agree with me on all of these. In fact, you might not agree with me on any of these, and that's absolutely fine. These are just my opinions. If you think differently, absolutely explain why in the comments below, and that's okay. But these are just my thoughts, and hopefully I've explained them fairly well. I'll put the final tier list up on the screen for you now. It'll be interesting to see if all the units actually fit on. I think having made the bits for these, I think there's like 40 or 50 units in total, which was significantly more than I expected. So might we have to do a couple of different tier lists rather than them all in one. But part of me wants to stick them all in one tier list just to see how it looks, and the fact that presumably B tier will just be off the edge of the screen. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you for the next one.